Worn-out bombers, like the B-24 depicted in this period cartoon, were re-enlisted. Wired for radio remote control. Fitted with television cameras. The plane was then loaded up with explosives to make the equivalent of a 20,000-pound bomb. One of the Aphrodite volunteers was Joe Kennedy, Jr.
Joseph P. Kennedy, Jr. was a Navy pilot. He had just completed his tour of duty in Europe. Technically, he could have gone home, but he volunteered to stay for this highly classified project. Basically, he had volunteered to be a takeoff pilot.
Pilot and co-pilot were needed to get the bomber airborne, after which they could parachute to safety. The pilotless bomber could then be remotely steered over the channel and into the V-2 sights. On August 12, 1944, Kennedy took off on mission number 3.
Joe Jr.'s mission should have been a really short one. He and his co-pilot, Wilfred Willey, really just needed to take this bomber off, get it into straight and level flight, and then bail out.
While they were still over Britain, there was a premature detonation. As a secret report said, the plane was, quote, suddenly enveloped in a large circular ball of flame and white smoke, and disintegrated in the air. The bodies of Kennedy and his co-pilot were never found. Aphrodite flew a few more missions, but never knocked out a V-2 base. Later, in 1944, the project was scrapped.
I know the Germans had drone technology, if you will. In other words, they could fly one aircraft from the cockpit of another aircraft in formation. They had that in 1937. The Americans had remote control of aircraft droning as early as 1943. And it's really hard for me to talk clearly or slowly because this information is so exciting and so profound, it absolutely needs to get out. And what I'm going to tell you next will make your jaw drop. In 1943, Joe Kennedy, Jr. was flying an aircraft called a B Bravo Q Bravo Quebec 8. It was a droned Liberator, Consolidated Liberator bomber. Your listeners and military students would recognize it as a B-24. The idea was to have the aircraft take off with human pilots aboard, nobody else, no engineer, no radio operator, gunners. It had 21,600 pounds of Torpex explosive, and the pilot crew was supposed to get it to altitude, set the autopilot for destination in France, which was one of the buzz bombs. I think they're called buzz bombs, those little rockets that were fired into London every night. Anyway, they were going to blow up that base. And the idea was once they had the automation flying the aircraft, Joe Kennedy and his co-pilot were effectively supposed to give a code such as 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, and then bail out. Behind the BQ-8 was a RAF Mosquito. That's a type of aircraft, RAF Mosquito aircraft, who was there to get a Cullen Howell movie camera recording of the successful bailout of Kennedy and his co-pilot. But let's go back to the 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato. On the second potato, in other words, 1 potato, 2 potato, the B-24 or the BQ-8 with Kennedy and the co-pilot aboard was blown up by remote detonation of the 21,600 pounds of explosives. You can Google all this. It's out there. But unfortunately, the media goons like Murdoch and his 3 ugly sisters, they do suppress the media in the United States of America, and they try to suppress it around the world, and they do a fairly good job.
Worn-out bombers, like the B-24 depicted in this period cartoon, were re-enlisted. Wired for radio remote control. Fitted with television cameras. The plane was then loaded up with explosives to make the equivalent of a 20,000-pound bomb.